from the back of Ruth the Realtor's car, it's the Stacking Deed Show. I'm Ruth the Realtor's part-time mechanic, neighbor Doug, broadcasting live from the spacious recording studio in the trunk of her 88 Lincoln Town Car. On today's show, you always want to use your credit for good, right? We'll tackle all the things that can go wrong when using a home equity line of credit for leverage when financing your first piece of investment property with the CEO of lending group Prosper, David Kimball. In our headlines, what happens when your projections on a property are way off? How could that even happen? We'll share one common mistake from a recent news story. Plus, we'll answer a call to Ruth's rotary phone from Reginald, who wants to know the potential downside of applying for relocation grants and programs. And of course, and this is the best part, I'll pop in with my property pop quiz. And now, two peeps who think a balanced diet means a cookie in each hand. It's Crystal Hammond and Joe Saul-Sehy.
Well, howdy, Joe. I actually am afraid of my cookie habit. I actually went to ChatGPT to ask it, hey, I eat too many cookies, help. And it gave me all these things that I'm never going to do. Like, one of them was replace cookies with healthier snack options like fruits, vegetables, nuts.
Do you think there's people
who wants to do that?
People reviewing the questions that get asked to ChatGPT and ranking them? I guarantee you that one went to the top of the stupidest questions ever list. How do I stop eating cookies? I want to eat less stuff that tastes awesome.
I think it's going to be a better day when ChatGPT gets honest and goes, Crystal, you're fucked.
Right. Yeah. Like just
next question, please.
Yeah, that ain't happening. Yeah,
it's
that's
bad.
right.
Then it says it recommends keep track of how many cookies you're eating. No, that's the problem. I'm doing the ostrich. I don't want to know. Like once the package is empty.
Yeah. Then the next question is, how do I boost my self-esteem?
How do I burn off a whole
Now that I just wrote down the number 74.
Girl Scout cookies.
Welcome to the Thin Mints podcast. She's Crystal Hammond. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy. He's neighbor Doug.
Welcome.
We actually, Crystal, we do have some fun today. We're going to talk about the world of home equity loans and lines of credit. And
HELOC.
Especially a good one for our new deeders. How does this work? What are some of the gotchas that might be out there? David Kimball from Prosper joins us. But first, we've got quite a headline. This is an area where new people get tripped up a lot too, Crystal. So let's go.
Hello, chaps. And now our Stacking Deeds headlines. Cheerio and pip pip.
Our headline today comes to us from ABC News, written by David Lieb. David writes, with home prices up more than 50%, some states try to contain property taxes. Man, for retirees, Tom and Beverly McAdam, the good news is the value of their two-bedroom home in suburban Denver has risen 45% since they purchased it more than 6 years ago. And that's also the bad news, costing them thousands more in real estate taxes and leaving less for discretionary spending. I've seen people, Crystal, get caught by this. They find out that, oh, a house is for sale. Somebody owned that house for a long time. They ask them, you know, it says right on the form, what were your property taxes? And they take that number and they don't think about the fact that, oh, that is because states have these programs, homestead programs. Michigan, it's called the Headley Act. Texas, just a homestead program, which keep your taxes capped, or at least where the bump ups are at a reasonable rate over time.
Yes.
People forget that.
Yeah. And same thing in Illinois. It's the homestead exemptions. If you actually live in your home, if it's owner occupied, you get a tax credit every year. And if I'm selling my home, I'm putting how much I pay in taxes, which you may or may not, if you're buying it as an investment and you don't plan on living there, you won't qualify for that exemption. And that's a totally different tax rate than I was getting. And I was living there for a long time.
It's a great way for county, states, cities to collect taxes because of the fact that this is a tax that helps out the current owner, especially in this case, retired people, but it also is a tax that the new owner is going to accept. The new owner is going to go, oh, okay, that's the taxes. It's based on what the house is worth. By the way, looking at how to get this done, I dove into how should we take a look at taxes. And instead of going to the paperwork, asking the current occupant what their tax is, instead what you do is you walk through the math yourself. So you find out what the tax rate's going to be. As an example, Texas doesn't have an income tax. So because of that, they sock it to you on property taxes.
Sock it to you.
So property is where it's going to happen, but find out what that number is, and then what you do, what that percentage rate is, and then look at what's called the assessed value of your house. Now, the assessed value of your house is going to be
Different.
Generally. It can be high, it can be low, but if you want to just do back of the envelope math, because you don't know exactly what it's going to be, Realtor.com recommends that you look at 80 to 90% of what you bought the house for is generally going to give you an estimate that's in the ballpark.
And also in Illinois, in Cook County, it's the Cook County Assessor's Office that calculates your taxes. So I would go to that website also and just look for, when you're researching, look for what everybody on that block pays. And you can also look at how long each person's lived there. So you can know, okay, this person is probably getting that home exemption. And I think they tell you, they actually list on the site also if they're getting that exemption. So you can see what everybody's paying. So that way, okay, the newer sales, the newer rate, they're paying more, and that's like a more realistic number to use.
Before I knew what I know now about real estate, Crystal, I got caught by that. I did not get the homestead exemption when I lived in Texas the last time. I totally missed it. Our taxes went up and up and up and up. And because I had twins that were going through high school and general chaos in my life, it was the woman who helped us sell the house who said, "You've been getting the homestead exemption." And I'm like, really? Now, what was cool was we were able to go back and apply. And even the woman at the courthouse was like, oh my goodness, we owe you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Was there a
They
cap
could
on
go
it?
back 4 years.
Yeah.
Oh, 4. Okay.
Yeah. The bad news was they went back 4 years. They couldn't go back all 10, but we got
something.
still a significant amount of money back.
So now you're making me wonder whether or not I'm almost sure I have. I am reasonably sure, because I do my taxes on TurboTax. I'm reasonably sure it asks you that question, and it might have done it like years ago, and it just then stores that in your profile so that when you do every year after that, it just inherits some stuff from the previous year. But now I'm going to go back and check and confirm that that's the case.
Well, and then that also brings up another point. If you're currently living in a state that has that homestead exemption, make sure you're getting it. And if you're owner occupied, please do that research. And then 2, there's another thing. You can file a tax appeal. So that's also probably what you did, Joe, when you realized, oh, I've been paying the wrong amount of taxes. Or even going forward, you can say, hey, these homes, if sometimes they assess the properties too high. And so you can go to the other 3 properties and say, hey, this is what they're paying with or without the homestead exemption, and say, I would like to pay, or I've been overpaying. Never do it if you've been underpaying, clearly. And another thing
Wow,
to
that's
bring
the best
up.
advice all day, Crystal. If you've been underpaying, learn how to shut your mouth.
Yeah, don't say a word. But a lot of times there will be a lot of spam coming your way, and they say, hey, let us file your tax appeal for you, because they want to keep a percentage of however much they get on your savings. So let's say you get to save 20%. They may want half of that or something like that. But this is something that you can do on your own. So look that up. It's super easy process. Now, even in Illinois, and Cook County, because some places are county by county. So definitely make sure you know what business you're dealing with. Sometimes they'll even put a flyer, because I had overpaid on some taxes, and they had a flyer in my tax bill that said, hey, here's how you just click this link or go to this site. This is how you do it. Always make sure it's the legit website too, because do not fall for any scams. So
with the amount of mail I've gotten about what you've talked about, Crystal, there's got to be a bunch of scammers in this area.
So always, because they'll have it off by, one letter, like Cook County, they may be 3 O's instead of 2. Like,
or a 0
definitely
for
make
an O.
sure. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Or instead of .com, it's .scam.
There you go. But please be diligent, diligent, diligent. Always be diligent.
This property tax area, I'd love to focus back on too, just looking at those comps. Because if
Yeah.
you find somebody that bought a house that's comparable to yours in your neighborhood recently, that will also make sure that that 80 to 90% back of the envelope math, you'll be able to see how that really works out for your neighborhood.
Your
Because
budget.
if it's a red hot area, that's difficult. There's another related headline here that I just saw, which is in Miami along the coastline. There's all these beautiful condominiums and
Beautiful.
people flock to condos. In fact, in one report, there was a gentleman who cashed in his entire IRA after he retired because he was going to have this beautiful view of the ocean, be right on the ocean.
Oh,
Well, because of,
ouch.
remember when that condo collapsed?
Yes.
When the condo collapsed, the city of Miami realized they didn't do enough inspections and they didn't do enough of the engineering work to make sure that everything is stable. So all of these big high-rise condos in Miami are being assessed these monster assessments so that the city can go in and so they avoid more lawsuits, right? So they're going in and doing that. This gentleman who cashed in his entire IRA, all of his retirement money to live, not a great strategy, by the way, would never do that.
No, we do
But-
not recommend it.
But Crystal, there was a special assessment that the Homeowners
Darn.
Association had, and this is happening all down the coast, $100,000.
Oh no.
Instead of paying the $100,000 assessment, he's now moving out. The bad news is he paid $450,000 for what wasn't a very big apartment. I don't remember how many square feet it was, but it might have been less than 1,000 square feet. But,
Sounds right.
oceanfront view, just
Right.
beautiful. Monster HOA fee already every month was about $1,200
$1,200.
month?
already a month.
Yeah, I've
Oh
heard
my
it. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, because they have the
That's
parking
nuts.
structure, they have the beach they're maintaining, they had a beautiful pool, they have all of these amenities, of course,
What are
the
they raking the
elevators.
beach?
I
How do
don't
they
know.
maintain a beach?
Special massages for all the restaurants
hope
every
rent was
Tuesday.
about
or
Do they
$400.
pull
all
up
the
the
restaurants,
sun
all
like
the residents.
drapes? They pull up the sun for the sunrise.
That's
too?
right. Yeah. I want to get
That's
those.
nuts.
I want to get those ones that automatically do it.
Yeah, my drapes have been broken since COVID. Like I was going to raise and the string snapped in my hand. So my drape's been half open all this
Yeah,
time.
that's like when
Don't
you lose a
care.
button on a shirt, you're never wearing that shirt again. You're like,
I
all
d-
you
I
gotta do
totally
is sew a
have
button
that
on.
shirt,
No,
Doug.
might as well
I
throw
totally
it out
have
right away.
that
It's going to
shirt.
hang in your closet for about 3 years thinking
Yeah,
I'll sew a
oh,
button on that
of course.
eventually. Nope.
Yeah. I have that shirt, one of my favorite shirts.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
And the button
Well,
popped off a few weeks ago.
bring it to FinCon. I will sew your button.
Crystal
for
will
you.
take care of it.
Yeah.
How do we get on that? Oh, but so anyway,
Broken curtain cord.
so this guy decided that he needed to move. Listen to this. And this is a story that's repeating all the way down the coast. He bought that place for $450,000. He finally sold it for $111,000.
I'll buy it for 111. Wow, but then oh man, that's too many
But then
expenses.
you
Even
get the
at
$100,000 fee.
assessment.
You get the $1,200 a month. You get all these
condo
crazy costs.
fee. Yeah, that's too expensive.
Nobody
Yeah.
wants to live there. Nobody wants to live there.
Dang.
And that for our new deeders, it's these type of things. The property tax gotcha when you purchase a house from somebody that's lived there for a long, long time and they've had this homestead exemption, and then bam, the property taxes are nowhere near where you thought they were, or there's an HOA fee that you didn't expect. There's a special assessment that you didn't expect. Got to dive into those little details.
It's like he's suffered from optimism bias, and he's just thinking, I want to be oceanside, see the sunrise.
Absolutely.
But
Who wouldn't?
yeah, then you get clouded by that, and then there's a lack of thorough research. So we don't want our deeders to get clouded by that, and that's where thorough research goes in. That's why one of the commercials in the area, the roof guys, they're like, always get 3 estimates, but make sure one is from us. They're not telling you just pick us. They're saying get 3 estimates. And for your 3 estimates, you want to do, upturn, downturn, average, like do those 3 numbers. And if it works out at the worst case scenario, then do it ish.
Ish. By the way, and your bias, talking about bias, Crystal,
Yeah.
these salespeople also know your bias is going to be to the last estimate that you get. I have personal experience here. I worked for a water softener company when I was in college, just, trying to get my way through college by having every bad job on earth. And I remember one of our top salesmen, Roy, saying one of the things we had to do when we called to set these appointments was find out if they're getting multiple quotes and encourage people to do it. Go, are you getting multiple quotes? Because you really want to do that. And they'd say yes. And then find out when the other quotes are and make sure you're last. And this is a direct quote from the slimeball salesman, Roy. Roy said, I want to make sure I'm the last liar they talk to.
Oh, man.
It's exact. Oh, it was the slimy sales pitch.
Jeez. They outlie the other two.
Yeah. Oh, it
makes their job easier.
Roy was so slimy. It was just so bad. Anyway, we will link to the story on our show notes page. How do people get the show notes? Because we deliver them directly to your mailbox.
Yes, hand delivered through the wire back in the day. Head to
Carrier pigeon.
Deeds. Yeah. Oh, yeah, those too. stackingdeeds.net/show notes, and they will be hand delivered by me.
Awesome. And we're super excited about our guest today. He is the CEO of an online company called Prosper, which was created because of the fact that peer-to-peer lending, remember the big peer-to-peer lending craze? Prosper was created during that time where maybe we could get a lower rate. Maybe we could get better terms because of peer-to-peer lending. Well, it's 20 years later. Prosper's helped over 1.7 million customers find financial well-being. And the big thing, though, their big flagship is the home equity loan and line of credit. And so whenever you want to know something, don't ask how it works. Ask who knows this. And I'll tell you, the guy who knows is our guest today, David Kimball, the CEO of Prosper. But
Who Not How. That was a good book.
Absolutely.
You recommended. Yeah.
Great book. But before we get there, it is a big day in history here, Doug, for one American city.
Why are you laughing?
This
is real history. I'm bringing real academic history. Hey there, Dieters. I'm Ruth's wrench-wielding repair guru, neighbor Doug. While we cruise around the most dominant economic city in the Arc-La-Tex region, think about it. How about a history lesson? This date in history was also a really important one for the capital of the Delaware Valley. It was June 18th, 1682, when William Penn said those magical words, it's as good as anywhere, I guess. Might as well. And founded the city of Philadelphia. Then, like unloading a sack of potatoes from a station wagon, he plopped down the first buildings. Nearly a true story. While it's known as the city of brotherly love, no one apparently informed its sports fans, known for throwing snowballs at players and booing Santa Claus, it's no wonder they had to install a jail directly in their football stadium. I'm telling you, that is a true story. But perhaps the lowest point came for Eagles fans when one, wait for it, punched a police horse. And he didn't just do it one time. Yeah, he did that. And that's not enough for an Eagles fan. Who hasn't said, I need to take out my aggression on a defenseless animal once or twice? Okay, Dieters, settle down. That was sarcasm. Don't call PETA on me. I think we can all agree that guy needs to be separated from society for, a skosh. Which brings me to the inevitable finale, today's property pop quiz. What U.S. Supreme Court ruling that happened on this date in 1968 affected real estate directly, but also made it impossible to separate Eagles fans from innocent service animals? I'll be back right after I go buy some carrots for Mr. Ed.
Crystal, we're talking with this brilliant team today about benefits, but one benefit that people can give themselves is better property management. And we've mentioned a ton of property management softwares that are out there, but let's give people 3 reasons why the one we're about to mention is different. First, software alone doesn't really solve your problem.
And that's why Hemlane's property management provides 24/7 repair coordination. That's right. You can either use your own service professionals or you can tap into their licensed network. Notice I said licensed network.
Right. No, that's a good point. And we talked
Yeah.
earlier in the show about it. Don't ask how, ask who. And Hemlane definitely knows who the who's are. Second, many of you are investing out of state. So Hemlane connects you with licensed leasing agents and other tenant placement services to help you find and place a tenant.
And then third, Hemlane is ranked #1 by Gartner with 4.8 star reviews.
Wow.
So they're legit. Yeah, I know when I'm looking for food, if it's 4.5 and under, I'm not touching the restaurant.
Yeah. When you see the sign that says discount sushi, you're like, no, probably not. Not two words that go together. Manage your rental properties with 100% transparency and control without the administrative work through Hemlane. They offer everything from advertising your rental to over 30 rental websites to automatic rent collection and late fees. Best of all, you can tap into their network for a more hands-off and remote experience. Hemlane will increase your satisfaction and your cash flow with your rental properties.
So visit www.hemlane.com and don't forget to mention to tell Hemlane that you heard about them through Stacking Deeds. Hemlane will dramatically improve your property management.
We talk about Hemlane because of the fact that we believe in them very much, to the point that we have an affiliate deal with them. So if you'd like to help the show and help yourself, make sure when you go to hemlane.com, you tell them what, Crystal, you just said.
Yep.
Please tell them Stacking Deeds
sent you.
We should have coordinated that.
Hey there, Deeters. I'm equine embracer and part-time mall Santa, when times get tight, Bruce Mechanic Neighbor Doug. As the 6th largest city in the U.S., there are, of course, a lot of great things about Philadelphia. Those murals all over town, for one, all that history, but it's easy to forget all of that when you're watching an Eagles or Flyers game. Attending a game in the city of brotherly love, it's just still so funny, may require more protective gear than the actual competitors are wearing. Things are a little better out in the various neighborhoods of Philly, not to mention all the other great cities around the U.S. Remember, our property pop quiz today is: what Supreme Court ruling that happened on this date in 1968 had a huge impact on real estate and people everywhere, but also made it impossible to separate Eagles fans from innocent service animals? Well, it was on this date 55 years ago that the Supreme Court barred all racial discrimination, private as well as public, in the sale or rental of property. Totally agree, because, discrimination sucks. But now hear me out on this, stick with me. Wouldn't it seem okay to create a special neighborhood for people who are total assholes to innocent service animals? Who's with me? I think we can all get together on this. And now, let's tune into Crystal and Joe up in first class as they talk about how to totally fudge up your home's equity with today's mentor, the CEO of Prosper, David Kimball.
And I'm super happy we have him here with us today, the man behind Prosper. David Kimball's here. How are you, man?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. But you know what, David? I was reading this morning that interest rates, notching up a little higher than they were this time last year. What do you make of that as a guy who deals in interest rate land all day, every day?
Well, listen, I think we've been experiencing this for the last few years for sure. So it has certainly kind of gone one direction for the last 2 or 3 years. And I think it really comes down to the economy. Where do we think it's going? The Fed obviously is trying to make sure that we're able to have reasonable inflation. And investors on the other side of that are speculating which direction the Fed's going to go, and they're interpreting every bit of news out there. And so you just see a lot of fluctuations. And I would just say we're just not in a really stable period right now. So anything that comes out, it's going to move it one way or the other.
We've got some headlines. We're going to be talking about this next week, actually, on the show a little more. Economists talking about us being in a real estate bubble. I mean, you're not in the real estate business, but you certainly are in real estate lending. Do you get the feeling we're in a bubble territory?
Listen, I think everybody since 2008 has been concerned we're going to be in that next bubble. That was such a just PTSD related experience for everybody that I think everybody's very concerned about that. And certainly as you look at just where home prices have gone over the last few years with everybody moving during the pandemic, I think everybody's concerned that that's not sustainable. And so certainly as a consumer, you're always looking to see, all right, I'm going to buy this house. Does that mean that in 2 years when I try to sell and I've got to move, I'm going to get, just smoked like I did in 2008? I just think that's in everybody's mind right now.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the real reason you're here. You're here to help us understand home equity lines of credit, home equity loans, the basics of how they work, David, and then really to dive into kind of where you see them fitting into a real estate investor strategy. So let's just start with the basics. Home equity line of credit versus a home equity loan. What are the key differences we need to know?
Well, I think at a high level, in both cases, you're looking at can I get a loan that is backed by the equity in my home? And so both for a home equity loan and a home equity line of credit, it's exactly that same principle. When you look at the actual tools themselves, a home equity line of credit, just as the name implies, is a line of credit, similar to, say, a credit card, where you're able then to have more of a flexible opportunity to move up and down based on what your needs are. So if you've got, say, a $30,000 home equity line of credit, you have the opportunity to borrow up to that $30,000. You're also able to pay that down. And so if you paid down $15,000 of that, you'd have 15 still available on that line of credit. Whereas a home equity loan is something that you get in a lump sum. And so typically a home equity line of credit is going to be floating rate. A home equity loan is going to be fixed rate. That's generally the case. That's not always the case. You want to make sure you're checking the terms. And so a home equity loan, you get it all up at once. Let's just say that you're making a payment to a contractor or something like that. You've got all that right at one time. And then for a home equity loan, typically because it is fixed rate and it is a term loan, you're going to begin paying immediately principal and interest and pay that down over that life of the term loan. Whereas a home equity line of credit typically has a draw period that might be up to 10 years where you might only make interest only payments. And then at the end of the draw period, you go into an amortizing period where you're paying both principal and interest.
Wow. I didn't know the end of that. I mean, I've had home equity lines of credit, and I guess I just never paid attention to the fact that at some point it turns into kind of a home equity loan instead of a line of credit.
Well, yeah, I think a lot of times people will get these loans and then they might move. And so when you move and you get the proceeds from your home sale, you're going to pay off your initial mortgage and then your home equity line of credit or your home equity loan. But yes, on a home equity line of credit, eventually after the drop period, you do have that time where it begins to amortize and you've got to make sure that you're paying both that principal and interest as you go.
Well, let's go into two pieces of this. First of all, you talked about the difference in interest rates. We'll have a fixed rate generally, like you said, check the terms. We'll have a fixed interest rate on the home equity loan. We'll have a floating rate on the home equity line of credit. I should assume a higher interest rate then on the line of credit than I would on the home equity loan, or is that not always true?
It really just depends. So if you think about it from a lender's perspective for, say, a home equity line of credit, the consumer has a lot of optionality, meaning they can draw whenever they want. The interest rate itself, though, will fluctuate depending on what's going on. So it partially comes down to the position that the lender has and what they think rates are going to do. So oftentimes, actually, an initial rate for a home equity line of credit may be lower, and a home equity loan is going to be a little bit higher because you're locking in. You're going to have that kind of in perpetuity, and on the other side,
oh, they're guaranteeing the rate. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And so the other side, the bank or the financial institution's got to make sure that they're in a position to be able to take that interest rate and be able to deal with that over the life of the loan, which could be 30 years.
If I'm a real estate investor and I have this equity in my house available, well, actually, before I get to that question, because I'm all excited about that question, I forgot to ask you the follow-up, which is fees on these, right? I mean, obviously there's the interest rate, but there may be fees on both. Is there a fee for a home equity loan? And typically what is that going to be? And then how do fees work on a home equity line of credit?
So you're going to have a couple of different kind of fees. A lot of times these will have an origination fee. So, it's similar to when you apply for a mortgage, you're looking to make sure that you're covering the upfront costs of the lender in this case. And so they may charge you a fee to make sure, hey, we're going to do a title search. We're going to do all this paperwork. We need to, for instance, on a home equity line of credit, a lot of people might just have that and have it sit idle. So it's more of a contingency plan for them. Well, the lender wants to make sure that they get something. So you might have an annual fee for the draw period for a home equity line of credit. You might have, in addition to that draw fee, you might have a non-use fee. So they really are motivated to have you utilize that line of credit. And so you just want to make sure as you're looking at these, there will be a series of upfront fees usually, And then, especially for a home equity line of credit, there'll be some ongoing fees, just maintenance fees or draw fees or non-drawn fees, as the case may be.
Gotcha. Now let's go into my next question, which was about use cases. When you see people use these, if they're a real estate investor, really, what type of use cases do you see people more often use the home equity loan? And then in which use cases do you see people use the line of credit?
Well, sometimes people will use a home equity loan as a secondary way to buy a property kind of as you come through. So you might have a first mortgage, and then you have this secondary loan on top of it to be able to really pay for the entire amount. So it gives you just a little bit more leverage on the property. But in addition to that, people are looking at these as a way to be able to fix up their home. So you might have then just a base mortgage when you buy a property and realize, oh goodness, this is going to require a lot of upkeep or require a new kitchen or whatever the case may be. And so you're going to look at this as a way to be able to effectively invest in your property. You've got this equity in there. You figure, oh, I'll be able to take a loan against the existing equity. And I think this upgrade in my kitchen, or I think this new bathroom, or the fact that my siding's falling off, these are going to make my home more valuable in the future. And I think people look at that with an eye to making the property more valuable or more enjoyable for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, as a real estate investor, looking at those fix-up opportunities can add huge value, I would think.
Absolutely. Now, the reality is sometimes they don't add the value that you think they're going to do. And you might put in that pink kitchen or that polka dot bathroom, and everybody else thinks that you've got really weird taste, and you might not actually add equity. In either case, you're going to have to pay that loan eventually. So as you're making those kinds of investments, you want to make sure that if you're doing it with an eye to increasing equity, you're going to make some good, at least design decisions as you do that.
Dude, are you trying to say everybody doesn't like the polka dots? Is that what you're trying to say?
I think some people like them, but it's, it could just be a this year thing. Who knows what next year is going to be? It could be checkerboard.
Well, let's talk about the risk here too. I mean, if I'm a real estate investor, David, and I take out a home equity line of credit, and for some reason I don't make those payments, now I've put the property that's on, AKA my primary house, at risk.
And that's exactly right. And I think, when you look at the use of home equity lines of credit and loans, these were far more common back before the Great Recession. So back in 2008, we kind of started this conversation with that in mind.
Right.
I think there's been a real reticence for people to lean back into these because back at that point, that's exactly right. You put your home at risk. And so on the one hand, these are typically going to be cheaper for you than, say, a credit card or a personal loan because you are backing it with the equity of your home. But as you back it with the equity of your home, you are then putting your home at risk if you're unable to make the payments. So in either case, you clearly have an obligation as a borrower to be able to repay. If you're taking an unsecured credit, conceivably you can kind of hive that up and protect your home. But when you use a home equity line of credit or a home equity loan, you are specifically putting that home as collateral and then at risk if you're unable to make payments.
I was super happy you were joining us because you've been doing this for a long time. You've seen a lot of different lenders come and go. And like me, David, you've, I'm sure, had your fair share of eye roll, right? Where you see some new lender doing something and you're like, oh, great. What are some of the gotchas out there you'll see companies do around home equity lines of credit or home equity loans that might be maybe at least just some way that the company's trying to bring in a little extra money for themselves, but in another way, maybe it's a little predatory?
Well, listen, I would say no matter what, as you're doing these, and especially when you're putting your home up as collateral, you want to make sure that you're reading the fine print. And so this isn't even a recent thing. When I first bought a home and I got a home equity line of credit, I thought this seems like a reasonable thing to do. And I was told at the upfront, hey, there's a prepayment fee. If you end up closing this loan in the next 2 years, you're going to owe us, I don't know, at the time, $700. And I thought to myself, I'm never moving anywhere. This is my first new house. This is fantastic. And then 6 months later, my company moved me and I had to pay the prepayment fee. Of course.
And you know why they did? Because you said it would never happen. That's why.
That's exactly. There was no wood that I was knocking on. I just obviously just,
right.
I tempted fate at that one. So there are prepayment fees. There are things, I should say, there aren't always prepayment fees. The loans that we offer do not have those prepayment fees, but some of them out there do have prepayment fees. I mentioned the draw fees. You want to make sure that you're aware of any fee associated with your use, or there may be potentially some restrictions on your ability to use it for certain proceeds. That ends up being pretty rare, but ultimately you're always looking at the documentation to make sure that there isn't a gotcha for you.
That's fabulous. I heard there's a company that does this really well. I heard this rumor. There's a company called Prosper that's been doing this for a long time. You guys started off in the wonderful world of crowdfunding. And obviously, as times have changed, you guys have changed as well. Tell us a little bit about Prosper and with the fine work you guys do, David.
Yeah, no, thanks. We've been around for almost 20 years. We started off, to your point, kind of the first crowdfunder, peer-to-peer lending is where we started back in 2005. And we started with personal loans, so unsecured loans. And right now we offer loans from $2,000 to $50,000, but they're unsecured. So back in 2019, we looked at the possibility for how can we find a better deal for our consumers? Because we knew about 40% of the people who worked with us already had homes. And so when we looked at the opportunity for people to be able to get a lower price on their loans, this was one way to do it. If you're able to secure the funding using your home, a home equity line of credit or a home equity loan generally will have lower terms or lower costs than a unsecured loan. So we put that forward back in 2019 for an opportunity so that our customers, instead of going from $2,000 to $50,000 on a home equity line of credit, depending on how much equity you have, you could go up to $500,000 of a draw, and on a home equity loan, closer to $250,000. But at rates usually pretty significantly better than you would see on an unsecured line of credit or like a credit card or on an unsecured personal loan.
A lot of our deeders have used unsecured when we get notes from people that they're using unsecured loans, they're using hard money loans, and that's always going to be at a much higher interest rate, deeders. Again, putting your primary residence up as collateral against your projects, like my co-host Crystal always says, you got to do the math before you do any of that, but certainly it can be a much lower rate. How much time should I invest in making sure that I have this line of credit or this home equity loan secure? How long does the process take from my application on the website to approval?
So it kind of depends on the partner that you use. So for us, usually that can be done in under 2 weeks.
Okay.
So when you apply on the website, you'll get an instant decision. But as you know, when you deal with real estate, there's generally a lot of paperwork that goes along with that.
A slight amount.
It's a slight amount. And so there's a title check, there's a flood check. There are things that they're going to look at the equity in the home. So we'll provide then using the platform an offer based on the inputs you provide. But the lender will want to come back and make sure that they said they had this much equity. And let's just confirm they have this much equity. Sometimes that can be done on an automated basis. Sometimes it requires somebody to come visit your home. So ultimately depends on just kind of how hairy the asset is. You know, if you've got something that is in a very big real estate market that it's easy to find comparables, then it can be really fast. If you're in a more rural area where that's a little bit more difficult, it'll be just a little bit more time. But usually we're looking at something that is just under 2 weeks. Okay. Potentially could take a week or two longer than that, just depending on how much extra checking needs to take place.
Excellent. So if I give myself 2 to 3 weeks and I know that I may have money in 2 to 3 weeks after the decision I get instantly, that's probably a good rubric to work from.
I think so.
Awesome. David, thank you so much for mentoring our deeders today. I super appreciate it. And everyone can find more at prosper.com, I would assume.
That's exactly the right place. Thank you very much for having me.
Big thanks to David. Crystal, this just doesn't work also for your investment property. It works in your overall financial plan. I know that for some people, keeping a home equity line of credit open on top of your emergency fund, even if you have an emergency fund, just covers that what if I end up in big trouble, I at least have it open now. If you remember 2007 and 8 and the real estate collapse, all of a sudden banks were getting rid of all your lines of credit. And so,
oh yeah, I remember that. Definitely. And it's also for what if. That way you're not caught over leveraged because you're not using the actual money. It's the just in case money for the HELOCs too, because if something huge like that $100,000 assessment that we talked about in that earlier segment, you're going to have options. You're going to want options. You're going to need options. And we're not talking options to go on a vacation and fund some lifestyle inflation. We're talking like emergencies, like something with your property, and even it could be a health thing also. So it's definitely a cushion that's worth exploring.
We asked David about using your personal home to take out the home equity line of credit. And obviously he liked that with some caveats. Have you ever done that? Taken out a home equity line of credit to use on investment real estate?
Not yet. I will say not yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely see the downsides to that. But overall, I like it.
Yeah, it's the easiest way. Yeah.
Yeah. Realize though, you're exposing your house. I mean, like David said, you're exposing your house to the
elements,
the
element of surprise, or the element of not doing your math. If you're doing your math and it's a shoe in,
and now you're not only going to lose the investment property, if you don't do the math right, you could lose your own house. So
exactly.
Be careful there, Dieters.
It's okay to wait for the right moment. I'm waiting for the right moment, and that's what you can do too.
Crystal, great news. We got another letter from a Dieter.
Woohoo!
In my hot little hands here. Reginald wrote to us. What does Reginald have to say?
Let's see. He had an interesting full name. His name was Reginald Kenneth Dwight. That's a pretty long name. Interesting, unique name.
Very formal.
Yeah, very formal.
Sounds very formal.
Yeah. If anyone knows Reginald, we would like to have him on the show. All right. So Reginald wants to know, relocation grants and programs to different cities seem like fantastic opportunities, but what potential downsides should I be aware of? Oh, he's talking about, I know Baltimore just announced one of their programs of you can buy these homes for $1, and City of Chicago had the large lots program. Bought the lots. That's what I did for $1. I even went through a program when I first bought my duplex in Chicago, my house hack, which I didn't know was a house hack when I bought it. I qualified for a grant to fix the place up. And so there was a loan, a mortgage loan for $50,000. And I redid the electrical. I tore walls down and made both bathrooms bigger, remodeled both bathrooms, put in hardwood floors, remodeled the kitchens, did a lot of work. And
what type of a paper trail did you have to keep?
For that, this is beautiful because it was directed to lower income individuals. I thought I was rich, but it was dedicated to low income individuals. So they actually had a construction liaison for me. So they assigned a person to me who she actually reached out to 3 different contractors, and the 3 contractors, they came and gave me estimates. So her and I sat down. The decision was always mine. So she's like, all right, here's how you understand what each estimate means, just so we knew we were comparing apples to apples.
Well, that's cool. There was some education with it as well. A lot. So it was up to me. So I ended up picking the cheapest because some of them were really nice, but I was like, it's a numbers thing for me. And so I picked the cheapest. So all the draws came from them and it was through her. So I had to give permission. She's like, are you satisfied with this amount of work? And yes, so I had to sign off on each construction draw till the end. I see. And then they directly paid from that draw, paid the contractor. So you didn't have even really have access to the money.
I didn't really touch the money myself.
Yeah.
And then one of the caveats, I had to live there for 5 years.
That's what I was going to ask next.
Yeah. What was the catch?
Yeah, there will always be something they want from you. There's where it is, Reginald.
And it was only 50%. So it was a $50,000 loan. They forgave $25,000 after that 5 years. It was through Neighborhood Lending Services. And so I had to write them a letter saying, hey, it's time for the loan to drop off. And then they verified everything. And then the loan fell off. So that was a cool program. But I didn't know going in, but they walk you through the program and everything. Because even I was surprised that I got picked. Like, this money was just sitting around waiting for people to apply. That's another thing. There are programs out there that a lot of people don't know. Like, I walked into that program and they're like, oh, here you go. Let's go. You fit the qualifications. Let's go. Very interesting.
I'm looking at some of these cities that are paying people to move. This is a Business Insider piece, because you also have those things where you've got these places in the United States that will offer you to move. It's always going to, Reginald, come with a catch. You got to stay there for so much amount of time, or you have to buy. In some cases, they want you to buy some of the historical houses which are downtown. You may have to fix those up. We've actually seen those programs, not just here, but in, they're very famously in Italy. Buy a house for $1 in one of these dying towns, but they're going to require you to fix up the house to a certain
level.
Yeah, specifications.
And
but
keep them. Yeah.
Tulsa offering people $10,000 to move there. Have you ever been to Tulsa? It's beautiful.
Never been.
What a great city. Columbus, Georgia, offering people money to move there. It is $5,000. And this is, by the way, some remote workers. So they're really specifying people that can live anywhere to do that. Now, and these programs too are for owner occupied, to be clear, Crystal.
Mostly.
So
Yeah.
this would have to be a house hack program where you're going to live there for the stated amount of time that they're going to want before you
Can move.
before you move.
And luckily for my program, it was a house hack. It was a duplex. So I believe they went up to a 4-unit for that particular program. There are situations where it can work, but some of the programs do have high competition. So make sure that you are looking at programs that, number one, before you are ready to uproot your life, that there's actually a fair chance that you can get approved for the program. And then always think about like relocation. Like, is this really somewhere I want to move? Because, a lot of times the neighborhoods you really have to watch like morning, noon, and night, and particularly late night. During the weekends, weekdays, you really need to make sure that this is a neighborhood that you've had your eye on or that you really wanted to live, because if you don't want to sign a contract and be stuck and you hate it. So we want you to love taking advantage of these programs, but you really have to, there's a lot of things you have to take into account, like relocation costs. Like, can I work from there? Is it enjoyable? Is it walkable?
But on the other side,
Long-term?
give yourself the opportunity to get to know a place. I know that, Cheryl and I were talking last night as we left this great concert. It was a group funded through grants by the state of Arkansas that does a tour all over the state. And they were doing Broadway hits. And so we go to this thing at our arts center, wine and hors d'oeuvres and this great performance, Crystal. It was amazing. But as we're driving home, Cheryl said, we're two people from Michigan. Like, would you have ever thought when we first got married long time ago that we'd be living in Texarkana, Texas and say that, and we love it. Yeah. Like, why would you, but we had to give it a chance. We truly had to spend some time here and know that this was a place that we'd like. So maybe you do the Airbnb for a month or two, especially if,
that's a good idea.
Get to know the heartbeat. I mean, around here, some of my friends that are doing lots of real estate deals, I should have some of these people on as well locally to talk about their real estate deals, because buying in some of these small cities, quite a much bigger opportunity than you would ever think.
And nowadays people are buying for peace, not for necessarily the next big thing, the next big area.
Well,
Quiet.
What's funny?
Good.
That's what I really like, is that I get the quote city experience. A friend of mine says, you live in the middle of nowhere when you go into the city. I get my city
Going
experience.
to the Costco.
It's just over an hour to Shreveport, which is much bigger than Texarkana. So Texarkana is 65,000 people, so it's not tiny. We're 2 hours from Little Rock, but we're 2.5 hours from the Metroplex, from Dallas. And
cool.
We will just go, 5 or 6 times a year to Dallas and spend a weekend in Dallas when we want to get the city vibe. But the cool thing is then I get to come home to no traffic, quiet, beautiful, and not have to be in the middle of it. But on the other side, Crystal, you're right in the middle of the activity.
Old Town.
I mean, but you can go everywhere. I see your bike routes and gorgeous.
Yeah. 29,000 steps last Saturday. I was going for 30, but it didn't quite make it.
There's a flex. I think Doug, I got 29 steps. She got the 29,000.
That one day.
I just love it when I'm driving around in my car and my watch misreads the bumps in the roads as steps. Like, that's how I pick up my steps.
Perfect.
Good one. Yay.
Thanks for the question. If you've got a question for the show, head to stackingdeeds.net/voicemail. We'd love to hear your question and we will help you assess the situation. But these always come with caveats. You got to know the full story about what you're getting into. It sounds good to get $5,000, $10,000 free stuff, $50,000, whatever it might be. But there's always a caveat. Make sure that that's truly what you're looking for.
Yep. Start with the catch and then make sure that that's feasible.
Again, if people want the show notes to today's shindig, Crystal, as Ruth says, how do they find it?
Shimmy on over to stackingdeeds.net/show notes and I'll shimmy the notes to today's shindig for you. I'm glad I didn't mess up those SH words.
I'm trying to shimmy, and I don't know that I'm really getting it.
No,
Yeah.
unshimmy.
Yeah. Please,
Unshimmy.
God. Please, God. Do not shimmy ever again, Joe. Doug, I think you got it from here, man. What were our takeaways from today's shindig?
Well, Joe, here's what we should do based on what we learned today. First, take some advice from David Kimball from Prosper. Before embarking on signing up for a home equity line of credit, let's understand how the rules work. Maybe rewind back to his interview and play it again. Second, especially if you're buying property from someone who's lived in a home forever, your property taxes will look far different than the current owner's tax bill. Don't fall into that trap. But the big lesson? Joe just went all lawyerly on me and informed me that the non-discrimination Supreme Court decision does not apply to non-commercial moving vehicles. Guess I'm stuck in this trunk for a while. Rosa Parks and I have so much in common.
Oh, God, no. No.
You
no.
do not.
No.
Stop it.
Far?
No.
Go a little too
No.
far?
Yeah.
No.
Maybe
No.
slightly.
Bye, Felicia.
I'll give up this seat if I need to.
Oh, God, no. Stop.
Quit while you're behind.
Yeah. I am behind. That's why I want to get out of the trunk. Anyway, thanks to David Kimball for joining us today. You can find out more about David's company, Prosper, at prosper.com. We'll also include links in our show notes at stackingdeeds.net.
Summer's here, and it's time to kickstart your fitness journey. Sign up this month and receive a complimentary fitness assessment and in-body composition testing to jumpstart your fitness journey. Join the WorldGate family and dive into summer feeling confident, healthy, and unstoppable. Visit us today, and let's make this summer your best one yet. WorldGate Athletic Club and Spa, providing fitness for every body. Join today.